But there's always been conflict between the Palestinians and the Israelis.
Yes.
But it's been quelled. What exactly do you think happened that made them want to just attack innocent innocent people?
One of the things I think that led to this is bad politics. We have the sacred site that is sacred for the Jews and for the Muslims, that is the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. And it starts there. Every conflict would start there.
Welcome to the Father Leo Show, where I'm dishing out faith, culture, and commentary. And this week, we have a very special guest who's going to talk a little bit about his experiences and the experiences of the people of the Holy Land in the midst of this ongoing war between Hamas and Israel. But before all of that, I want to say thank you to all of those who subscribe. Please make sure you let others know about our Father Leo Show and encourage them to not only subscribe, but to leave comments and questions, because it helps to engage with our own audience. And a special thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. Without you, we can't actually do this show. So thank you for all that support. Now, what I want to do is bring on our special guest. His name is Hani
Awwad.
Awwad. I was going to say Hadid, but Awwad. He is a tour leader and a tour guide in the Holy Land. Hani, thanks for joining our show.
Thank you for having me here.
Tell me, first of all, a little bit about you, and then I'm going to jump into some of these deeper questions about the October 7th situation.
So I'm Arab Christian. I live in Nazareth. I was born there and I was raised there. Yes, I'm a tour guide for the last 10 years. I've been leading groups and tours of pilgrims going around all of the holy sites in the Holy Land. I think it's very important for us to do it, as it's part of our to complete our faith, let's say, as being Christians, to walk where Jesus walked and to experience the places in real life.
And a lot of people in America, when they hear Arab, they don't necessarily hear a Christian. What's the percentage of Arab Christians in the Holy Land?
Yes, we are very few, unfortunately. When it comes to Arabs in Israel, we are 1.9, 1.9, about 145,000 Arab Christians that they live in Israel. In the West Bank, which is under the Palestinian Authority, it goes even less, about now maybe 0.9.
So less than 1%.
Less than
So
1%, yes.
as far as a geography lesson is concerned, because a lot of people don't fully understand how the Holy Land is broken up. You mentioned the West Bank, and then that's different from Gaza. So if we can kind of maybe go through a little bit of the geography itself.
Okay.
So Jerusalem is situated where in Israel?
Jerusalem is at the center of Israel. It's right between the West Bank and between Israel. It's like it's right at the center of it, at the heart of it. It goes a straight line with Tel Aviv. So then we have Jerusalem, and right beside Jerusalem there is Bethlehem, which is a little bit more south.
So all of these biblical places that Catholics and Christians know, Nazareth, where Jesus was conceived,
And the
Bethlehem, where he
Galilee.
was born,
Yes.
and then Israel, and then Jerusalem, where he died.
Yes.
And the West Bank itself is on the west side of
The Jordan River.
the Jordan River.
Yes. Which is east of Jerusalem, but west of the Jordan River.
So when we hear chanting in America, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, they're talking about all of these places. And so a lot of people in America are very conflicted and confused. What I'd like to do is maybe go through a little bit of the timeline. On October the 7th, this terrible situation, this war kind of took over the world's attention. For you, as an Arab Christian, where were you at that time?
I was on my way to Jerusalem. I was getting out of my house, and then they called me. They asked me, "Where are you at?"
Who's they?
The people I work with in Jerusalem.
Okay.
Yeah, I had to meet with a tour agency we work with, and I was just driving my car out of the driveway, and they called me, "Return back home." I say, "Why?" They told me, like, war has started. I said, "Impossible." Like, there was no signs. All was peaceful, all was good. It all happened like in one night, early in the morning, actually. Then, like, okay, open the news and see. And that was devastating, watching what happened.
War has started.
War has started.
And it truly is a war. But there's
Yes.
always been conflict between the Palestinians and the Israelis.
Yes.
But it's been quelled. What exactly do you think happened that made them want to just attack uh, innocent innocent people? Granted, the situation might not be fully innocent, but the people who died were innocent.
Well, one of the things I think that led to this is bad politics. Bad politics is the main reason why that happened. When it comes to, we have the sacred site that is sacred for the Jews and for the Muslims, that is the Dome of the Rock in
Yeah.
Jerusalem. And it starts there. Every conflict would start there. Um,
But why do you think?
because it's sacred for the Muslims now. We have the Dome of the Rock. This
Correct.
is where the Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven and came down. Um, but it's where the first and second temple used to be before it was destroyed the year 70 by the Romans. And Judaism is not complete religion unless they start sacrificing again. Now, this spot is also sacred for the Muslims. And this is what makes tension build up. And of course, there is the other side of it is the Palestinian Authority wanted to become a state. Like Israel is a state, the Palestinians also want their own country.
But in a way, they do have their own state, the Palestinian state of Gaza and the West Bank, or are these just, I don't understand, are they not states? Do they not have their own governing body?
They do have their own governing body, and they have their own police force, but it's for law and order. But they are not called a country uh, as it should be. So they are run by a leadership, and it's different leadership if you talk about the West Bank. That is another party. And of course, Gaza, we all got to know now Hamas was running Gaza. So it's it should be the same territory, but they split, and now it's two different parties, political parties, that are running either the West Bank or either Gaza Strip.
Who is running? The Gaza Strip is run by Hamas, right?
Yes,
Politically
yes,
speaking.
yes.
And the West Bank is run by
Fatah,
Fatah.
yeah.
And are they considered a terrorist group as well?
No, no.
So the West Bank is generally more peaceful.
Well, during these times, there was not a lot of problems in the West Bank. There was a little bit up in the north of the West Bank, but not,
Which is kind of the region of Haifa, right?
no, the region of Samaria Mountains.
Samaria Mountains.
Yes,
Okay.
and close to, let's say, the southern borders of the Jezreel Valley. Also, there's like some areas that have a little bit of a problem.
And the problems being, namely, just people throwing stones, or they're actually violence and murder, or
It can go, yeah, it will cover it all.
it'll cover it all.
Yeah.
And the problems namely because the two just don't get along.
And tension, and one of the part is the settlements that are within the West Bank. It's a huge part of the conflict that would make the gap wider and wider.
Okay. And so, in other words, the Palestinians don't want Israeli presence on their land.
This is one way to put it, yes.
But are there Palestinians who actually work and live in Jerusalem?
Used to be, yes.
They used to be.
Yeah.
Until when?
Until the war started, they stopped them now.
This recent October 7th.
Yes. So they're having talks to bring them back, because a lot of them would work in construction, and the construction sites are closed. There are no workers now.
So on October the 7th, you're on your way to Jerusalem. They tell you war has started. What kind of went on in your own heart and mind?
I said impossible. Like,
But didn't you know that there's always been struggle?
yeah, I thought it's another like skirmish or something that happened as it used to be, like little rockets falling from Gaza Strip around. Then when I opened the news, I knew right away that, yeah, this is war.
It was another level. In these skirmishes, you mentioned that another rocket sent over from Gaza. How
Yeah,
do you
for
all live knowing that people are sending rockets over to you?
so it's actually well, if you look at the map, I know Israel is a very small country.
It
It's like
is.
that dot, and this would affect the way of people looking at it. But us that we live there, the rockets would be around like 7 miles, let's say 7 miles away from the Gaza border, and this is most of the rockets that will fall there. Uh, they can reach Tel Aviv, not very often, and usually you hear it in the news when they get to Tel Aviv. Before I came here, life was more getting to go back normal.
And the strange part is people think that normal is occasional rockets being sent over.
No, normal, that means you can go out without hearing the alarms a lot.
And the alarms, how often do you hear alarms? Prior to October
Ah,
7th,
prior we didn't hear them.
you didn't hear them.
No.
And then
But around Gaza Strip, they did, like every once in a while, maybe. I
the,
cannot give a number.
the Israelis who live near the Gaza Strip,
Yes.
they would hear that, so they are more at risk. And how
Yes.
far is that area from Jerusalem?
So, yeah, before I answer this, you have to know that Israel is the size of New Jersey.
Correct.
And when you say, like, I've been here traveling, for example, taking the train 3 hours to get from Flemington to Baltimore, for me, this is too long. So when I say Jerusalem, Gaza is about 2.5 hours away, it's long, like it's far.
So that's considered far
Yes.
for the people in the
Like you
Middle
can
East.
drive all of Israel from the north all the way to the Red Sea, 5 hours driving. You can do it. And that's it.
And so even though for us in America, that seems like a very short
Like,
distance.
yeah, you can do it like in one day and
Correct.
continue doing your day. We'll be tired. We'll probably go and rest after riding for this long.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. And but that's the interesting part. So your closeness to the skirmishes are somewhat relative to your experiences because for us, if something's 5 hours away and we see that bombs are coming over, they're sending missiles 5 hours away, we're going to move even farther away.
Further.
And these skirmishes have all just been part of your upbringing. I mean, when you grew up as a child in Nazareth, what did you think of these skirmishes?
Well, well, before that, there was no borders. People lived together. A lot of people would go to the West Bank and buy their stuff, their veggies, food. They go to the retail stores in Gaza, and they were going to the West Bank. It all happened after the year 2000, after the second uprising that happened. And every uprising, every tension we have, it's always connected with the ideology behind the Dome of the Rock and behind the Jewish holy site.
So people are going to hear second uprising. Give me just a little brief history of that.
So it started they when the Prime Minister of Defense, no, the Minister of Defense, he went inside. It was Ariel Sharon, and he walked in on the Temple Mount, and the Muslims saw it as a direct threat because now they are going to build the temple, and it just was intense. Um, you can say I cannot even call it misunderstanding. Um,
Because at one point, the Dome of the Rock was put under the jurisdiction of the Palestinians.
the Dome of the Rock is not owned by Israel or the Palestinians. It's run directly by the King of Jordan. He's like the apotropos over it.
Okay.
And it's the holy site for the Muslims. Like I cannot come and say I want, for example, to destroy the Holy Sepulchre Church.
I mean, even for a Christian to go to the Dome of the Rock, they're not permitted to say prayers or anything.
So it's different because we have our Holy Sepulchre Church.
Correct.
We have the tomb of Christ, and this is our center of the world.
Which we are going to talk about in just a moment, but I want to go back now to the experiences of October the 7th Since then, can you give me a brief timeline of what it was like for you, for the people? I mean, the country. You were put under lockdown,
No,
people
not
were
lockdown, but we were on high alert.
high alert.
Yes, and they stopped working. They stopped for the first 2 weeks were not easy. It was hard to get. We were still figuring out what's happening. So we just have to be on high alert. We have to be safe.
Were you allowed to go outside of your house? Were you
Yeah, 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 yeah. You can continue like everything as you can, but like you cannot go to work if you are working in Tel Aviv or in Haifa, the big
okay?
cities. So you can work from home, but it's still they were still adapting to this new reality
You
of
didn't have
the
any
war.
tours, did you?
No tours. Yeah, I have a lot of
Everything
cancellations.
canceled pretty
hmm
much instantly. And so,
I I I had a tour coming a day after.
oh,
Yeah, and like it was canceled right away. I just knew that after seeing the news, I knew there will not be tours for a few months.
and you kind of survived the 2 weeks, obviously, just doing what you can. What did most people do? You said that they kind of returned to a normalcy after 2 weeks, or
Depends where they are. Like we have people that are close to the border, about 9 miles south of the border. They had to go to like away from their houses because it's dangerous to be there because of uh, the um, the Lebanese side joining the efforts of Hamas war, trying to pressure Israel to stop the war against Gaza. And that is Hezbollah, not like in Lebanon we have Hezbollah and we have uh, the um, the Lebanese government. So Hezbollah is taking the initiative to press Israel not to have full force in Gaza. So they start having some attacks on the northern towns and cities. So the people who live there, they have to take refuge in Galilee, closer to the central part of Israel, so that it would be away from these attacks. And until this day, actually, they are still in the hotel.
so people
Yes, only the ones who are close to the Lebanese borders and part of,
they moved to
yes,
Galilee
and
and they're
yeah.
just staying in
And
kind
if
of
they are in Gaza, they'll go up north. If they are very close, they'll go south a little bit.
so a lot of people are going to want just to hear who's at fault. Like, whose fault is all of this? And I know that that is a difficult question to answer, but from an average, not like you're an average man, but you are a citizen of Jerusalem,
Nazareth.
Nazareth. You citizen of Nazareth. So help me to understand that. You're not a citizen of Jerusalem. Is not help me to
So
understand.
when it comes to Arabs, we have three types of Arabs. If I can call them types, but basically, it depends on the wars of Israel. So, for example, let's talk about my family. We've been in the Galilee area since the 16th century, and 1948, we have the independence of the state of Israel, and now we find ourselves under new ruler, and we have the ID and we have the passport. It's basically we are the ones who didn't leave our or immigrated or during the war we just stuck to our places, our lands and our houses. So we have the rights to have ID and Israeli passports.
Okay.
But between 48 until 67, Jordan had all the ground up to Jerusalem, the east side of Jerusalem. So the people who live there between 48 67, they are Palestinian under Jordan.
It's terribly confusing for many Americans, including myself, to know that a country the size of New Jersey has had so many little fractions of who's in charge of what part of that land. And so for you, is it confusing?
Mm, not after growing up there. It becomes like in our system.
In your system, it's part of your blood to just know that there's going to be tension between who's in charge of what land.
Well, we're looking forward that the tension would end and you will have peace and they can just sit on a table and talk.
But it hasn't happened in hundreds of years.
Um, it has to happen at some point.
It's amazing the hope that you have, because that's kind of the sense that I get. Was there a sense of hopelessness after the days after October the 7th?
It affected some of the people's lives. There was a lot of talk now, let's go and immigrate, that's it.
Just people wanting to leave.
Yeah, that was the main atmosphere when that happened. People were just leaving. Okay, we lost our work. It's now war. Um, so let's leave. Some of them would try to immigrate. Some of them would leave and come back after it's over. And some of them would stay and would be there and fight for it.
And your primary work as a tour guide meant that since October the 7th until now, the taping of this show, it's February the 5th, you've not had any work.
No, everything is canceled. And
Does the government provide some sort of sustenance in the meantime?
they give us about 70% of our former wage for the last 3 months. But this time it's for 180 days. They will pay for it. But after that, we have
They will
to figure
pay
out.
you up to 480 days from October the 7th.
No, 180 days.
Oh, 180
Yes.
days. And we're approaching 100
Yes.
days now.
Yeah. And this is like in the best case scenario. It depends on the ages of the people. Like if I can go and work, I'm in my 20s, so it would be probably maybe 100.
Are you feeling safe to go out and do things?
Yes, yeah.
So since October the 7th, 2 weeks after that, people were kind of
It was
living their
tense.
life normally,
Depending where.
depending where.
Yeah, like Nazareth is a bit far from Gaza and far from Lebanon, so it's easier there to go back to normal. Haifa, they came back to normal, but it took them a little bit longer, and also Tel Aviv took them a little bit longer. Jerusalem is far also, but like you can go and you can live, but in your mind you know that we have war going on, so you'll not be like 100% into it. So
The American embassy suggested that no Americans go and visit that area. So there's obviously some sort of there's a warning for people to go. But have you seen any tour groups?
I have seen very few. I seen some Indonesians group from Indonesia. So they were coming to Israel, very, very few in numbers. Most of them canceled.
Does it feel empty?
It is empty.
It is
It's empty. Like if you've been to the Holy Sepulchre Church, you remember how long you waited to get to the tomb. And once you go to the tomb, you have few seconds.
Technically, we didn't wait because we had mass there, but that's
Yes.
another story.
Yes.
But
But people would just wait and
hours.
hours. And then when you go there, you have few seconds. It's empty that much that I went twice and I was inside for 10 whole minutes, even a little bit more than 10 minutes. I could have stayed in the tomb for 10 minutes because there are no people.
My goodness.
If there would be people, they will just tell me, go.
So the sense of the people, including your neighbors and your family, first of all, is your family safe?
Thanks be to God.
Thanks be to God.
Yeah.
And your close friendships.
They are good. But some of my close friends immigrated.
And did you know of anyone who was involved directly or affected directly by this war?
Of course, yeah, I know a lot of people actually from both sides.
From both sides.
Mhm.
And that's kind of where I want to go now. People will always again wonder who's right.
You know, I had one thing in my mind when the war started, that the first victim was humanity.
Humanity in general.
Humanity in general. Once you have people dying, it's not a just cause for me anymore.
because both sides are, in a way, I mean, from my experience and my understanding of it, limited as it is, but deeper than most, there's just problems on both sides.
Yeah, and we have to value life a lot more.
So, do you think that even people who live in the Holy Land don't have the full story?
No, they do have the full story at a point. Um, because we read Arabic and we read Hebrew and we read English. So I always say like the truth would be somewhere in between all these three
Mm.
sources.
What do you think is going to, not a hope, but kind of a general expectation of what's going to be happening in the months to come?
So now they're having a talk of ceasefire, and during this ceasefire, Israel would retreat from Gaza, and there would be some kind of a military regime until, with the help of other Arab country, they will have a leadership, new leadership that would lead the state of Palestine. This is what I heard last, but there would be a lot of people with and against. I think it would be a good time to solve this conflict.
Solving this conflict, because the conflict hasn't been solved in, again, many
Yeah, but
years.
people want a thing that they can belong to. They want a house, they want a place they can call home. Both
And
sides.
let me hear about the Christians in these areas of conflict. There are Christians there, correct? And they're just kind of caught in the middle.
Yes.
What, besides them praying for peace, do they have any say in the matter? I mean, would a Christian ever be nominated or elected to be part of the leadership of the West Bank or Gaza?
Could be, but once you are a minority, it would be more hard. It's all numbers.
So minorities will probably never be able to rise to a position of leadership there. That kind of saddens me because it seems that Christians are natural peacekeepers.
Yeah, but numbers would decide eventually.
Mm-hmm.
This is the vote system.
And again, your experience just growing up, you don't feel stressed about hearing about the skirmishes, but October the 7th, it really impacted you.
Yes. Yeah.
And what do you think is going to be the future of people being able to come to the Holy Land again?
My hopes.
No, what do you think as an expectation? I mean, I think you have tremendous
I
hope,
hope
it's clear.
I hope by well, it all depends in this on these talks. If they get to a solution, then like of course they have to release the hostages. This is a big part of ending the war or not.
Hostages on
The Israeli side.
the Israelis releasing the hostages from,
No, the Israeli hostages that
okay,
would be released.
so Hamas has hostages
Yes,
and they need
about
to be
136.
released. 136.
Yeah.
My goodness gracious. Do you know of any? Do you know any of them?
No.
No. But what is your heart experience when you hear this stuff? I mean, you're a young man, you've got so much to offer. You hear this all around you. What goes on in your own heart?
I feel sad because we have limited life. Why won't we live it in peace and harmony together? Why it should always be conflicts? Not only in our country, it's also in the world. Like people are talking about little differences instead of looking at what's in common and how can we live together. They just choose to look at the difference in the other than accepting it.
So this small country, and even a smaller part of that country, has so much religious significance. It's a place where Jews, Muslims, and Christians have holy sites.
Hmm.
Why do you think they can't live in peace if they all profess a love and faith in God, who is a God of love? What is going on there?
I think part of the problem is that Palestine still is not country.
It just needs to become a country.
Yeah, that will solve a lot of things. in my opinion.
In in that country, it sounds simple, but does it have implications for the safety and security of Israel?
There will be, like, where countries, there's Lebanon, there is Jordan, there is Egypt. Like, it's not that it would be something out of the ordinary.
But I guess the easy question, why can't it just become its own country? Doesn't it have its own rights?
Not fully. They have to be self-efficient, electricity and water at the very least.
Now, some people will argue, and they will argue it because they want to hold a position that so much money has been given to the Palestinians as a people. How is it not how are they not able to just become that self-sufficiency, that kind of,
Bad politics.
yeah, my God.
Yeah,
On on that side of it all,
on both sides.
on even with the Israelis.
Yes.
So there is definitely, without trying to say any too much and implicate you, you're saying that is Israel's presence somehow negatively affects Palestinians' ability to self-govern.
In a way, yes.
Okay. You know, I the only way I can liken it is in America, we give so much money to underrepresented communities, and yet they can't seem to kind of grow into their own self-sufficiency. And we're trying to figure out why that's the case. So I think your problems are not isolated to just the Holy Land. I think they're part of where humanity breaks down. But as a tour guide, so I want to shift a little bit. How do you how do you maneuver people through the Holy Land,
Through the
knowing
Holy
all
Land.
of this is happening just miles away?
Well, when we are touring, it's the areas that we go to. It's not an area of conflict or tension. Just with this war, the tension and conflict spread out to all the sides, all the places, for a time. But when we tour, it's safe. It's safe to go to Jerusalem,
Sure.
Tel Aviv,
It's
up
beautiful,
north.
it's peaceful.
Yes,
And you, as a tour guide, you've been doing this now for how many years?
10 years.
10 years.
Yeah.
How did you get started?
Um, I wanted to become a tour guide since I was in high school. It started when I was a kid racing my sister going from the Rosary. We have a Shrine of Mary in Nazareth, so it was in May, so we were going there to pray the Rosary. And on the way back, we decided to race. And when we were racing, I stumbled and fell on a sharp metal construction waste, and I got injured. And I was in my neighborhood, but nobody around me helped me. People around the neighborhood uh, who came was a tourist. He was an old man. He carried me. He took care of me, wrapped my wound, and then I was telling him by signs, showing him the way. And he led me to I led him actually to my grandfather's house, and from there to the hospital.
So a tourist kind of helped you out.
He helped me out.
Where was the tourist from?
I don't know. He had blue eyes, white hair,
Okay.
so probably Western countries.
Mm-hmm.
And but this is where it started for me to think that tourists are good people, and I have to thank him somehow. I didn't even saw him again.
Mm.
So yeah, I think it left something in my heart that I decided to do something related for tourism.
And when you lead people on tours, what are you hoping that they get out of your experiences?
So to be called a tour guide, I don't really like it. Okay, I'm touring. I know how to guide people, but mainly it should be connecting and experience amplifier, let's say. That I want them to experience the site, to connect with the scripture, and my role is to help them do that, and then just let the emotions do the rest of the work.
Before you become a tour guide, what kind of coursework do you have to go through?
We have to go through a year and a half course, which is about it. It always changes every year, but in my time it was 570 hours of studying in the class and 80 trips around
And what kind of
all of Israel.
classes? History, language, what
Everything. Archaeology, history, languages, religion, modern history, uh, biblical history, and
even politics?
politics. We try not to get to it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because it can really mess things up. It's too much to try to digest as you're touring, it seems.
Yeah, but part of the history is also politics.
It is. So it's undeniably a part
Yes.
of it.
Yeah.
And when you're going through these classes, was there one that kind of really captivated your heart and said, you know, I love this part of it all?
I like the geography of the Holy Land.
I tell people that the
Yes.
geography is actually theology in the Holy Land.
Yes, exactly.
Tell me why.
Like one of the greatest examples is the area of the Dead Sea.
Hmm.
It's the lowest body of water on earth. That means it's the lowest place where a man can stand on the whole earth. And from there, you start going up to Jerusalem. So it's literally going up to Jerusalem. But then there is another valley, Jerusalem, Jericho. It's called Wadi Qalt, or the Valley of the Shadow of Death. So in order for people to go to Jerusalem, they had to walk through this valley. The name was given by King David when he wrote Psalm 23 there. So he called it the Valley of the Shadow of Death. Like, even though I walk through the Valley of the Shadow of Death, because it's very narrow and deep, and it always have shadows. And it's in the desert. So no matter what time of the day you come there, there will be some parts that light would not reach. And from there, you continue all the way up to Jerusalem. It's about 5 hours walk, a little bit more maybe, depending on the pace. And then you get to the holy city, Jerusalem. And the way it's built, we have the Jordan River north of the Dead Sea. And the Jordan River, this is where Joshua and the Israelites have crossed to eventually get to I like to call it the earthly Jerusalem. Because Jerusalem has a name, it's the city of peace, Urushalem. And so this was the physical crossing of Joshua, and the baptismal of Jesus would be our spiritual crossing to get eventually to another Jerusalem, but now it's the heavenly Jerusalem. So we baptize, like we die with Christ, and then we rise with him, so that eventually we will get to our hope, the Jerusalem of heaven, when Jerusalem would live up to its name, being the city of peace.
It seems to me that tour guides in the Holy Land, there's a whole bunch of different types. I mean, I remember going there and hearing meeting Muslims who change the name to Christian names so that they can come across as, you know, Christian guides and such. The majority of pilgrims that come are Christians, correct?
The pilgrims are Christians, yes.
But then you have
Different
denominations,
but
yeah.
yes, they are mostly Christians.
and their experiences always leaves a profound impact. When you work with a pilgrim group, what's the impact you want to leave with them?
So if I want to know if I did good work or not, I look at the people's eyes. I love it. For me, just to see the emotions and the tears in their eyes, I know that I fulfilled my purpose in that way. Because a lot of people would come from all over. Some of them, they were really working hard to save this money. And the very least I can do is to bring the Bible alive, to let them understand the tradition, the culture behind Jesus saying this or that, connecting it with the site, looking at the archaeology and try to figure out and understand all together. Like leading them to that understanding is that this is why Jesus performed the miracle here and not in other places. Or this is why he took, for example, the apostles all the way up to Caesarea Philippi, where it's a pagan cities, just to compare the gates of hell with the gates of heaven, because back then they believed that there was a cave leading to one of the gates of hell. So Jesus did not just do it out of a whim. He wanted the apostles to see it and want us to understand that even the gates of hell will never prevail on the gates of heaven. And there are so many stories. And once you are there standing, you read the gospel. Imagine you are looking at the Galilee mountains, at the Sea of Galilee. This is what Jesus saw. Like when you look there, this is what he saw 2000 years ago.
Yeah.
And then you have it in your mind. Now you have the picture, you have the scripture reading. And then, of course, we will get a lot of depth in theology, in understanding the scripture better and more, and based on the culture and based on the history.
And now, so you've been touring for the past 10 years. You're kind of really, truly reaching a sense that this job is a vocation, it seems. Mm-hmm. And you are called to do this work. What's next for you?
What's next? I would love to continue being a tour guide. I think I need to do something that my work will reach further, because it's a ministry. Yes, I would love to share Christ with all of the people that I can reach.
And you've been kind of touring around America for the past month or so, and what's been your message?
I was telling the people about, I had two presentations. The first one is leading us to light, as from darkness to light. Because if we remember, God's plan was always to lead us from a dark place to a light place, even in the timing of the day. When he said the day would start evening to evening, not like we do today, sadly, midnight to midnight. Midnight to midnight, you start darkness, you end in darkness.
Mm-hmm.
Evening, you start darkness, you end up in light.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the whole divine plan of God, is to, after Adam and Eve ate from the apple, the original sin, we were exiled and we started to die. We start to be enslaved to the shadows of death. And like, it's funny, I said, like, from the lowest point at the Dead Sea, we start to go up to Jerusalem. And what happened there? The light of the resurrection. So God is preparing us and leading us to the light of the resurrection, because only that light can wipe the shadows of death. So that was the first part of the presentation. The second one, I picked 4 sites in the Holy Land, and we talked about how to connect with God. So first we have to transfigure, which is to become
Mount Tabor.
On Mount Tabor. But transfiguration is to have this higher, more beautiful form, and even spiritually elevated, so that we can meet with God. So we cannot stay earthly when we want to talk to God. We cannot really stick to that.
And it does seem that all of these places, if you're not actually there or see it, you don't get a real sense of what Jesus is talking about.
Yes.
So I do want to encourage people to go on a pilgrimage. We have worked together on a pilgrimage, and I'm a strange tour leader in many ways. But
you are so much fun. So much fun to be with.
But I hope that people also see the seriousness with which, we, as kind of the tour leaders of people, we want them to taste and see the goodness of the Lord. So I'm going to just ask you a couple quick questions, and then we're going to bring this to a close, because this has been fascinating for me. What's your favorite place to visit in the Holy Land?
My favorite, I have lots of favorites, but it's not even a favorite, it's my backbone in my life. It would be always the Garden of Gethsemane.
Gethsemane, yeah.
Yeah, this is where I find myself related to it, and I think what happened to Jesus really encourages me. Every time I face challenges, every time I want to pray to something, I go back to the Garden of Gethsemane. Because it was the perfect example of prayer, what Jesus did there. It was the peak of his incarnation. He suffered like us. He feared like us. He was angry like us.
He got rejected.
But mainly what happened there is he got to a point where he said, I cannot take it any longer. A lot of times we will be on our knees and we're just praying, I cannot do it. And Jesus did it there. And he prayed, and he got in so much depression that his sweat became like blood, because he had to do something very hard for him to do, which is to wear our sins. And wearing our this robe, let's say, having a very disturbed, ugly picture of God, that is our sins, then he have to face God when he is one with the Father. That brought him this sadness and this pressure that led him to sweat blood.
Yeah. How do you maintain that excitement seeing this over and over and over again? I mean, do you ever get bored going into the sepulcher?
No, never.
So how do you maintain that sense of excitement?
I don't maintain it. It's the pilgrims who would give me this excitement. Because every time it's different people, different experiences, different emotions. And I love to see how people connect with the site.
What is besides the religious sites? I do a lot of food things on my tour, different, very unique food things. Besides the religious side, is there a part of the culture that you love sharing with people?
Food culture?
It's up to you. I mean, for me, it's the food culture. People
food culture,
geek out about it.
I would love like everyone to taste the shawarma in Nazareth. The baklava in Nazareth is really good, which is a type of a dessert, very sweet, different types. The kinafe.
The kinafe is my favorite.
Yes, like the kinafe. You cannot go there.
We gotta stop because I'm gonna get hungry. I'm starting to get hungry right now. Yeah. No, it's really been a fantastic experience to hear from you, not only the pain of it all, but as you love to talk about, from the darkness to the light. I think we're going to be moving in that direction. We'll be certainly praying for you. But if there's anything that you'd like our listeners to learn about you or your message, what would be a final thought for them?
Final thought? They have to come to the Holy Land. They have to return to the Holy Land. This is where
true.
You will complete yourself as a Christian.
I completely agree. If the Christians don't go to the Holy Land, then these religious sites will be taken over and turned into museums.
I was traveling. I went to a lot of churches in Europe. And in my travels, very beautiful churches, very well decorated, but it was lacking the spirit in it because there were no people there. Such a very big, magnificent. People go in as tourists, not as people
Correct.
Who would worship in the place. So it's worshiping that really keeps the place alive. And it's very important to keep it this way. And one of my fears is that we might get to a point where churches would become museums.
Which is why we're going to keep that in prayer. I want to thank you, Hani, for being a part of this show. It's been very insightful. Our heartfelt prayers go with you and your family and all of the people who are affected there. We will certainly keep you in prayer. And more importantly, we hope to work together again.
I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. As a matter of fact, ladies and gentlemen, in February of 2025, I will be leading another pilgrimage to the Holy Land. God willing, it will happen. And you'll get a chance to meet Hani in real life, as well as our other collaborators, and you will taste and see the goodness of the Lord. I want to thank you all for joining us on this very special show of the Father Leo Show. I want to thank my special guest, Hani, and again, blessings on his family. Please make sure you let others know about the show. Encourage them to subscribe, leave comments. We'd love to have these ongoing conversations with you. And please consider supporting us on our Patreon page so that we can continue to dish out faith, culture, and commentary. God bless you. Stay hungry for God.